And so what I have found is the number one thing I like to focus on with teen athletes is blood sugar regulation. It sounds simple, but it can be pretty complex. And I feel like if they can get to the point of understanding how blood sugar affects them mentally, physically, and emotionally, they can begin to manipulate that to their advantage to increase their athletic performance and endurance on the court, off the court, and even into the classroom.
Welcome to Functional Medicine Coaching Moms Podcast, where simplifying healthy lifestyle change for moms is the only goal.
Hi. Today, we are super excited to have Michelle Doel, otherwise known as the Teen Health Coach, on the show. Michelle is a board-certified functional medicine health coach with an education degree from Purdue University. She is also a married mother of 3 teenage athletic girls. This episode is for you if you have teens or young adults in your life playing competitive sports and you've wondered about the role nutrition and stress management plays in their performance. Both Kristen and I have teens in travel sports. My son is a nationally ranked wrestler, and Kristen's 3 kids play ice hockey. 2 are in high school, and 1 is in middle school.
I know personally that my pediatrician doesn't say too much about nutrition or stress management at my kids' annual physicals. And sports today for kids are pretty much year-round and most days of the week. So I am concerned and want to make sure my kids are getting adequate nutrition. And also with such busy schedules, I wonder if they do get enough downtime and stress reduction. And I just want to mention also that Michelle is going to have a special offer at the end of the show today, so be sure to stay tuned.
Michelle specializes in a holistic and comprehensive approach to the unique challenges teenage athletes face. By emphasizing the significance of food choices, she guides teens in optimizing short and long-term performance. Michelle's unique mix of nutrition, education, functional medicine, and whole health wellness expertise allows her to provide valuable insights and practical tips for both teens and teen athletes.
So, Michelle, I'm so glad you're here today. We were so excited to have you. So many of us have teens and tweens playing sports, and it's definitely not casual usually. It's usually pretty intense. So what should we be concerned about when it comes to our kids' nutrition?
I feel like I kind of threw myself into this genre because I do have my own 3 kids who are athletes, using my knowledge to help my kids to be the best version of themselves mentally, physically, emotionally, and then kind of navigating that towards athletics. And so what I have found is the number one thing I like to focus on with teen athletes is blood sugar regulation. It sounds simple, but it can be pretty complex. And I feel like if they can get to the point of understanding how blood sugar affects them mentally, physically, and emotionally, they can begin to manipulate that to their advantage to increase their athletic performance and endurance on the court, off the court, and even into the classroom.
Yeah, that's funny that you say that because I feel like, a lot of times when people hear blood sugar, they think, oh, diabetes or whatever. They're just not thinking about it from just a regular perspective. So if you could share more with what that looks like, that would really help.
Absolutely. Back in the day, this is what I like to say, before there were processed foods, we probably were eating all of the right combinations of proteins and fats and carbohydrates. At the right time, we were moving our bodies naturally, either before we're eating or after we're eating. So the idea of regulating blood glucose, let's say a couple hundred years ago, probably wouldn't be such a big thing. But because our teenage athletes throughout the day are exposed to lots of processed carbohydrates like Starbucks or Dutch Brothers or, at fast food restaurants, they're consuming a lot more carbohydrates than maybe we would a couple hundred years ago, right? So what happens is when we're consuming those carbohydrates, our blood sugar is spiking all day long, which is normal. When you consume carbohydrates, your body calls on insulin. That insulin comes out to push that blood sugar back into your cells, muscle cells, liver, into our brain, so that we can use that for energy. So what kids need to understand is that they can actually have too many carbohydrates, which when that happens, we actually put out too much insulin, and that causes an overcorrection. And when you have that overcorrection, then you get to that point of low blood sugar. And that's when you're going to feel moody and irritable, not be able to focus. And it actually, because of the insulin, which is a hormone, it can disrupt our testosterone, our estrogen. And so these are the hormones that we need to be using efficiently, that we need to be working efficiently for us in order to build muscle, to recover, to be able to utilize that muscle efficiently. And so learning how blood sugar affects your body and your athletic performance can really help you become a better athlete. So what I do when I talk to kids is I say, okay, you have a couple of different, windows of time that you need to think about carbohydrates and ingestion. If you're an athlete, you have a 2-hour window. And during this 2-hour window, this is a time where you want to make sure that you're having a balanced carbohydrate, protein, and fat. Because when you have the carbohydrates, the proteins, and the fats, your blood glucose wave is going to be steady. And, science shows, and doctors, endocrinologists say, we want that to be back to normal, back to baseline after 2 hours. And so if you have the right amount of protein, fat, and carbohydrates, then that's going to return to normal. If you are, over the top on carbohydrates, or you're just eating carbohydrates, then after that 2-hour window, what's going to happen is you're going to have an overcorrection, and that's when you're going to feel tired. So if you are getting ready to, go to a tournament, wrestling, ice hockey, volleyball, my girls are volleyball players, you really want to think about stacking those carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. You wouldn't want to wake up and have a glass of orange juice and some pancakes, and maybe just, one little egg. The egg is good. It's good for protein, but that's a really heavy on the carbohydrates, and you're risking that overcorrection, which will set you up for set you up for, I don't want to say failure, but kind of not be your most efficient self for the rest of the day. And so you really want to make sure that what you're eating that 2 hours before is really important.
Can you give us an example on what that 2-hour window could look like then?
Yeah, absolutely. Anecdotally speaking, I've worn a continuous glucose monitor several times, and I have tried just the bagel, right? A little bit of bagel, a little bit of cream cheese. And then I've tried like a bagel with some nice cage-free eggs and, even a piece of sausage on it. And the difference, obviously one has more calories than the other, but the difference in blood sugar spike was quite huge. Just the bagel spiked my blood sugar beyond what it should be. And we could get into the specifics, but no really reason for that right now. But, it spiked my blood sugar well beyond what it should have been. But when I did it with just the sausage and the egg and the bagel, it really kept it baseline. So something like that, where you have your fat, protein, carbohydrate. The other option is a smoothie. One thing I do for my kids before tournaments is I just give them a protein smoothie. And we're dairy-free at our house for several reasons, but you don't have to have a dairy-free protein shake. So we do a plant-based protein shake. It has fats in it. It has carbohydrates. I'll usually throw some peanut butter in there or some almond milk. And what I've done also with my CGM is I've watched how my blood glucose reacts over, a 2-hour time period, and it stays very steady. The spike isn't high. I feel satiated, which is also important, right? So you want to get the right calories. You want to be satiated. You want it to last an extended period of time so that you are well fueled for performance, you're digested and ready to go. So those are 2 examples that I use with my kids.
Yeah, and those are really easy to do, I think. It sounds reasonable. I mean, and it's so, it's funny that you're saying this because so many times, like, I'll see someone brought Dunkin' Donuts and like that's what everyone's eating early in the morning before the hockey game or whatever. And I'm like, oh gosh. So now what you're saying is, yes, that would totally spike your sugar really high and then give you the crash because you don't have the
Yes, yes,
protein and the to cut that.
Right.
Okay.
right. And that's the 2 hour.
Yeah, and what was really great and relieving is like you can still have that bagel, have eggs and some have that
Yes,
sausage, or if you don't, or I know some people don't eat meat, whatever, but just to
right.
get in those other, and you can still enjoy your bagel.
Yes, right? Like eat those carbohydrates. Your muscles need those. We need to make sure that we are eating the right amount of carbohydrates because you don't want to get to the opposite end of, something called relative energy deficit syndrome where you have more calories out than calories in, right? So we want to make sure, and that's the other thing. I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not prescribing, just giving information. So I want these kids to know, and especially in females, you need to eat. You need to eat breakfast. You need to eat lunch. You need to eat dinner. You need to eat before you go to practice. You need to eat after you go to practice because you don't want your body to start using nutrients that it needs to fuel you in order to survive, right? And so we don't want muscle breakdown. We don't want our bones taking calcium from our heart because we're not giving it enough energy, right? So that's that whole kind of other side of that too, right? Too much, too little. It's a teeter totter. It's a balance. But back to your Dunkin' Donuts reference, I would never suggest Dunkin' Donuts before an event, right? But it's a simple carbohydrate. It's easily broken down. You can digest it quickly. So if you take that idea, understand that there is a time and a place for that, which is, 15 minutes before you're going to sprint on the track, or you're going to get in the pool and you're going to swim, or you're going to, whatever it is, you're getting ready to play a whole nother volleyball game and you've just played another one. Your body does need energy. And if you consume, this is cool, studies, science show that if you consume simple carbohydrates within 15 minutes of your performance, your body's going to use that up. Your muscles going to take that up because they start to contract right away. So you don't actually need to call on that insulin to push it into your cells because your muscles are already contracting. And so when these kids are about to start something simple, like, there's those, energy chews that, Cliff Bar makes, and, what's the other, so many brands like Goo brands, things like that. Those are things that you can consume that can digest quickly, that will give you immediate energy for immediate performance, right? Because 15 minutes before, you don't want to eat that bagel and that, eggs and the sausage, because you're not going to digest that, right? All of your blood is going to go from your stomach to your muscles because that's what has to work. And then your food just kind of sits there. So timing is important.
Yes.
Yeah, and I really don't think we think about the timing. So this is really helpful for people, I think.
Yeah.
And
Great.
then what about this, like the stress management piece? Like I know you talked a little bit about, how you help teens with that with us, and we'd like to know more about that.
Club sports are probably, I think, the most stressful thing an athlete can endure. Academics are hard, school is hard, but there's something about club sports. I don't know. What do you ladies think about being involved in club sports and what your kids experience?
It's a huge commitment, time commitment, and just the stress. Yeah, with balancing your academics, with that, they just don't have the free time that you might have if you didn't play club sports.
Exactly. So, it's about time management. And, one of the things, as we are told as health coaches, that, humans are creative, resourceful, and whole. Like they already know what they need to do to make that change. And so it's really fun working with individual teens, individual athletes specifically, because we do work with time management. And it's all about them understanding, being kind of stepping outside, being objective, watching what's happening and saying, what is not working for you? Right? What's not working for you? What's something that you can change that's going to relieve a little bit of stress on yourself? And the cool thing is inevitably they come up with something, right? It might be, I need to make sure that my cell phone, I'm having downtime on my cell phone, maybe at 8 p.m., right? So that I can relax, so that I'm not distracted, so I can get that homework done. Some kids have said, sleep obviously is really important. And so, maybe it's, you need to, learn how to manage your time better during the day? How can you get some homework done? I don't know if your kids have like homeroom or anything like that. How can you manage your time more accurately, so that you can get some of that stuff done before you come home? And that's just kind of working with them individually and helping them shift some things in their life that they know that they can manage. And then it's empowering for them. They understand that, hey, this stress that I'm going to have with club sports and academics is something that's going to be here for a very long time, right? I'm going to graduate. I'm going to go to college. I'm going to have a job. And so how can you step back, be objective about what's going on in your life and figuring out, what do I need to change mentally, physically, or emotionally to make things a little bit smoother? So that's on the end of, just working one-on-one with kids. I feel like the other part is, and again, I don't know your experiences with club sports, but these kids go into these sports and their coaches are called coaches, but I call them experts because there is traditional coaching going on, but it's expertism going on where they're telling these kids, here's what has to happen. Here's what you need to do. Here's what you need to be accountable for. And they come on to the court, and sorry, I keep using court because that's what we're on, right? As volleyball players, they come onto the court and they want to play. They want to give it their all. But what that expert / coach doesn't see is all of the other components that these kids are coming onto the court with, right? How were their relationships affecting them that day? How was their food affecting them that day? How much did they sleep? What are their academics? What kind of baggage are they bringing onto the court? And so what this does, I think, is it sets them up for more stress, right? They start to feel like maybe they're not performing their best. Maybe their coach thinks that they're not working hard enough. And they start to create these stories in their mind of, I'm not good enough, and I need to be better. And they start to lose that self-esteem and lose that self-efficacy because of these stories that they are creating in their mind. And so, one of the things that I have done with a few teens, and this is kind of something new that I'm starting, is really trying to dig into that subconscious, right? Those stories that they're telling themselves. And I learned this from a class that I went through, a mindset class. And it is, in order to change the way you think about yourself, you need to kind of do two things. One is get to the root of those fears, those frustrations, those inadequacies, and write them down, right? It's called an emotional dump. And write it down 5 minutes every single day. Your biggest fears. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough at school. I'm not going to perform great on the court. I'm letting my teammates down. Get it all out with the idea of, making space in that subconscious for positivity. And so that's when you go straight into like 5 minutes of gratitude, just quickly writing down, oh, it's not just gratitude, but bragging about yourself, right? Like, oh man, I really made amazing serves last night at practice. I got up and I jumped and I hit that ball from the outside and I hit it down. I was a great teammate today. Things like that, so that you can balance that negativity with that positivity and really change your mindset going into practice, right? And maybe it's something, I've tried this one time with one of my clients, maybe it's something that you do mentally in the car before you go in. You're thinking about what could go wrong, right? What types of fears that you have, and then quickly top that off with, okay, this is going to be great. I'm really good at A, B, and C. And then you are mentally prepared to be out there to do your best and to not go back into that story of, I'm not good enough or things aren't going well for me.
Yeah, that sounds very powerful. I mean, mindset is such a huge thing that I think isn't talked about that much. Like you said, you have your expert coach talking to you, and then you're just living your life, but no one's really talking to you about what you're thinking on the way to the tournament and all those things. So that's huge.
Yeah, sometimes I feel also it's like you're being talked to what to do, but not being empowered with the tools on how to manage yourself, so that you show up, being your full self, and, acknowledging fears and, all of those, like Kristen and I were going to be doing this conference and we're both nervous and we're like, hey, as we get closer to the conference, it's probably going to heighten. But at the same time, like if we weren't having those feelings, that means that we don't really care about it, or we're just not normal. There's something wrong. So acknowledging that some of these feelings are just normal feelings and it's okay, and you're going to arrive on the other side either way, and you're going to be better for it. And,
Yeah,
I just always think like, is this happening to me or is this happening for me? And
I love that.
yeah, so that was so, so wonderful. Really, thank you so much for this time and sharing with us how we can help our teens. We are going to be mindful of our time. So, Michelle, what do you said a couple of things, but what are two simple steps that you think that moms can take toward helping their teens, athletes improve their mental and or physical health?
Yeah, I think mental health, I say just listen to them, right? Talk them through the
Yeah.
understanding of voice your fears, make them real, say them out loud, because if you don't, they stay trapped inside, right? And then brag about yourself, share that positivity, right? Create that positive mindset as often as you can. If you have to do it 1 time a day, 2 times a day, 3 times a day, it can become a habit. And we are what we think we are, right? And so we can change our story. And I think that's really important. Physically, I want to go back to nutrition and blood sugar, just
Yes.
reminding the kids every time they eat. This is not just athletics, but every time they eat, they should be thinking about, this is what I tell my kids, lay down your blanket. Okay. If you sit on the ground in jeans after a rainstorm, your jeans are going to get saturated really quick. If you put a blanket down first, you're still going to get wet, but it's going to happen a lot slower. And so that analogy is blanket your stomach with some fats and some proteins before you ingest that carbohydrate. You need carbohydrates. You're growing kids, but the way that you can manage that blood sugar spike for focus and performance and endurance is to lay down your blanket. Fats, proteins, then carbohydrates. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Love that.
That's
Wow.
super helpful.
Thank
Yeah, that's a good one.
you. That was really fabulous. Well, Michelle has two specials for offers for us for our listeners today. So drum roll please. Get get 10% off her 10-week teen wellness program. DM FMCM, that's for functional medicine coaching moms. That is our code word, and her handle is the Teen Health Coach. Also, go to, let me just go back. So her handle on Instagram is the Teen Health Coach. Okay. So I hope I didn't confuse anyone. Also go to www.myplantworks.com. That's www.myplantworks.com for 15% off PlantWorks protein powder, which is her go-to for teen athletes competing in morning tournaments. Use the discount code Teen Health Coach to get that offer. Okay, to connect with Michelle, find her on Instagram at the Teen Health Coach. And her website is www.verticalhorizons.org. That's www.verticalhorizons.org. Thank you so much, Michelle.
Thanks, Michelle. This was so great today. We really appreciate you coming on, and I think we learned a lot.
Thank you, ladies. I really appreciate you having me.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Bye.
The information provided in this podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended for the purpose of diagnosing, curing, treating, or preventing any disease. We are functional medicine certified health coaches and not licensed medical professionals. The opinions and advice of guests are their own and also not considered to be medical advice. Always consult with a healthcare professional when making any healthy lifestyle changes. We would love to hear from our mom community. Any wellness topics that are high on your list, please DM us at Functional Medicine Coaching Moms. We can also be reached via email at info@functionalmedicinecoachingmoms.com. You can find Functional Medicine Coaching Moms podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit the subscribe button.